Hey everyone, welcome back to the Maximum Human Potential YouTube channel. So today we've got another big deadlift session. Well, I am feeling a little bit beat up, so I'm just gonna have to play it by ear. I'll probably reduce the number of sets I do, change a few things up, just to still get a quality session in, and I'll explain what you do when you're in this kind of situation. But at the same time, if I can, I'm going to use a few tricks to still get a bit of decent output out of my body, because in a strongman comp, you're always going to be pretty beat up and fatigued going to the deadlift. So you often, you might do a heavy yoke before, some kind of heavy overhead event, so by the time you get around to a deadlift, your lower back's basically toast. So when you get these sessions in training, you've got to take the opportunity to really see what you're made of and see if you can still get together a good session despite the circumstances. Now, in saying that, if you're really fatigued, you still got to cut that volume back so you're not overextending yourself, and that's creating that hangover effect where next session becomes even worse. You push through that, and then next thing you're really burnt out. So that'll be a bit of an interesting look at that process. Now, how it's going to work, same as last time, I'll do some activations first. So I just started working with a chiropractor, Dr. Nathan from North Fremantle Chiropractic, and he's changed up my activation sequence a little bit. So we're going to do a few ones that I haven't done before, so I'll probably butcher them, but I'll work on that. So first up, we've got some McGill crunches, some Copenhagen planks, and then I'll probably do my glute activation and my lat activations. And then to wake up my lower back, I'll do a few block pulls, which I'll explain in a second when we get to that, and then we'll start deadlifting from the floor, but I'll probably change the reps up a bit slightly just for a little bit more warming up. After that, I'll move on to some farmers walks. So last session we did that medley sandbag run to farmers. This time will be more of a heavy grip session, so I'm just going to do one pick, hold for about 30 seconds and try push the load on those. After that, we'll do a bit of loaded stretching for the hamstrings and lower back, which will be quite a little interesting topic I'll get into when we get to that. And then afterwards, a little bit of calf work to finish and a little bit of ab accessory work. Alright, so activation's done. So then I did some glute bridges and some straight arm pull downs to switch the lats on the deadlift and the glutes on. And then I did a McGill crunch. So just really trying to switch on my abdominals, press the lower back into the ground, just to sort of activate it. And I'm really, when I'm deadlifting, I'll be in this kind of rounded over position, so it's quite specific to the deadlift position I'll be taking when I train. And then I did a Copenhagen plank, which was when my leg was up on the bench and I'm lifting my whole body up. So that's to switch on the adductors of the hip joint. And I really liked that one actually. That was the first time I've ever done it. Felt pretty weak in that position, but really felt like it switched on some areas that hadn't been active before. So some great recommendations there from Dr. Nathan, and I'll see how that plays out when I start going heavy today. Alright, so that first exercise, block pulls there, the purpose of that, it's a little bit higher than a normal deadlift, and that's kind of my weak point. So one of my weak points is that doing pulls from that height, so a little bit off the floor, it really takes the legs out of it. So it's a weird kind of leverage position from that position. So if you can warm up from that weaker position where there's no leg drive out of the bottom, when you go back to the floor it generally feels easier. But I like to mix up the heights, so sometimes to activate I'll start really high and even drop the heights as we go, so that way if we start high we can lock in a really good position and then work our way down to the ground. But today I went with those two blocks, so just enough to take that leg drive out, and went 60, 100, 140, 180. Now I'm going to do one rep from the floor and then get into my work sets. Alright, so one thing I want to talk about was how if you're fatigued, but you're not completely cooked and you can still get a bit of quality output, you still want to reduce the overall amount of work that you do, so keep it to a minimum. So like normally I do 6 sets on deadlift, today I'm cutting it back to 3, and I'm also changing my warm-ups to kind of trick my nervous system into getting a little bit of output. So what do I mean by that? Well, normally I just do single reps to warm up. So I just be 60, 100, 140, 180, 220, 240, and then into my reps 260. Now today, being a bit beat up, it took a little bit longer to activate. So I do my block pulls first, and then instead of just doing straight sets the same way every set, I'm doing ramping sets. So I started doing 220 for 5, and then, 6 rather, and then I did 240 for 5, and now I'm gonna go for 260 for 5 reps, which will be a very small personal record. So I'm capable of a lot more than that, but I haven't done it, so I'm still gonna count it as a record. It will still be a win for the day, and it's still some quality work, but it's not too much that I'm not gonna be recovered for next deadlift session to get back to those full 6 set progression that I've been doing. Alright, so I just got done with deadlift, so I only did 1 top set and 3 sort of ramping sets. So I finished on 260 for 5, a little bit more on the tank, which is technically a small PB, so I did do 6x4 the other week at the same weight, so I'm definitely capable of more, but for an off day I'm going to take this little win and move on, so rather fatigue myself excessively and then not be recovered for the next session. So next exercise is going to be a farmer's hold. So I need to work on my grip strength, so I'm just going to do 1 pick. I've warmed up with a heavy weight and hold for 30 seconds, and then next time it comes up in rotation I'll attempt to beat this time or add a little bit more weight. So you might notice last time I did this workout I did this medley sandbag to farmers. So I do that once a month, so I'm deadlifting heavy every 2nd week, and the other week I'm doing this heavy hold. So I'm hitting some event work, getting some conditioning, and then on the other week I'm getting a bit more heavier grip work in. So everything is sort of improving slowly over time in all facets of my farmer's walk and strongman conditioning. Alright, so 13 seconds this time, so a little bit off the mark, but generally grip can be one of the things that goes when you're a bit fatigued, so I'm just gonna move on and beat that next time. So next up, I'm gonna do some loaded stretching for my hamstrings and lower back. So what do I mean by loaded stretching? So just basically using a weight to pull yourself into a stretch. So I got this from, there was a guy called Untitled who created this style of training, probably more over a decade ago now, called DC training, and he had this concept called extreme stretching. So basically a 30-second to 2-minute hold under load, basically like a forced stretch. And the idea behind this was to trigger more muscle growth, perhaps even enable a bit more space in the fascia for the muscle to expand. And there's a bit of research backing it up. There's been interesting studies on bird wing muscle growth. So they actually done this experiment where they get a bird and tie it up and actually load its lat muscle with up to 3 times the weight of the bird and leave it there for days. And there's actually extremely rapid growth. In some cases, something absolutely ridiculous, like almost like doubling or tripling of the muscle mass in a very short space of time in the bird. So there's something about stretching under load which does increase muscle growth dramatically. Now, unfortunately, I wish we could all tie ourselves to something and hang off and just get huge, but unfortunately with humans it doesn't really work the same way, because we just get injured training like that, because our relative strength, so our strength to body weight ratio isn't as high as a bird, so that would just be too much stress. So what we can do though to get the same benefit is, after you trained a muscle group, load that particular muscle group just for 1 set. And if you're doing a lot of heavy strength training, it doesn't have to be excessive load. If you're doing a more of a hypertrophy machine-based program, something a bit more, less neurologically taxing, a bit higher repetition, high volume, you might be able to really force that stretch a bit harder. So I've recently started doing this for my shoulders, arms, a few different body parts, and noticed a little bit of extra growth, especially in my back doing this loaded stretching. So this week, since the results have been so good in my other body parts, I'm going to throw it in and trial it out after my deadlift session. And one other benefit from this little addition is a bit less delayed onset muscle soreness, so that's one of the benefits I'm hoping to get out of it. Alright, so just got done my loaded stretching, so that was the first time using it for my posterior chain. So definitely need to work on flexibility a bit. It's really decreased quite dramatically in the last few years as I've gotten a bit bigger. But by throwing these in, I should see a pretty decent difference with a really almost minimal expenditure of effort. So that really loosened up my lower back and hamstrings quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to progressing that over the next few months. So the progression with that started with a minute this week, nice and easy, and then I'll work on that technique, slowly straighten out my legs, get deeper, and then once I do a really clean 2 minutes, I'll add a bit more load and start that process again, and just slowly keep that in rotation throughout all my phases of training, because it's not too taxing, but it does provide some really great benefits. Just about to do some bit of ab wheel. So Nathan has given me to this to strengthen my lower abdominals. So I've got some pretty almost weird weaknesses in my lower abs, which I've kind of avoided up until this point. And it's going to be pretty embarrassing, this next little exercise here. I won't be able to go the full range. Control probably won't be that great. Technique will be something to be desired, but I want to show the full workout and show how once I strengthen this over the next few months, I should see a really big increase in my deadlift. So that's one thing that I preach to all my clients that I want to put out there is, once you find a weakness, leave your ego at the door. Don't be ashamed to train it, because once you strengthen that, it will have a massive carryover to everything else. Next one we're going to do is a little calf finisher. Now, if you're doing strongman, powerlifting, a strength sport, or really any other sport that isn't bodybuilding, you haven't got the time or the inclination to do like a 30-minute, 1 hour session on calves, once or twice a week, which is often what people think it might take to really get some big calves, and a lot of people will kind of use that as an excuse to avoid calf training. So I've naturally have pretty minuscule calves. Now they're normal sized after a lot of work this year, and what I've found, you can actually get the job done with a lot less sets than you probably think. So what I'm about to do is a drop set. So I've got 4 plates on the leg press. I'm going to do 10 reps at each plate, and I'll finish with a loaded stretch, straight into a loaded stretch. So similar to what I did after the farmer's walk, did a hamstring and lower back loaded stretch, but the calves have a lot of endurance, so we can do a drop set and then straight into that stretch. So it's one just massive burner set, and then what I'll do is every week I'll add 2 reps. So we 10 reps this week, and then we'll go 12, and then 15, 18, so yeah, 2 to 3 reps, and then once I get to 20 I'll add another plate and start the progression again. So it's just a nice slow steady progression which has enough volume, enough sets and reps. At the same time we're still getting a progressive overload, which is going to drive muscle growth. So if your calves are stuck and you want to smash them out in 5 minutes, try that twice a week, once on a leg press or a standing calf raise, the other one on a seated calf raise or some kind of calf raise where your knees bent to get the soleus. Whereas the leg press or the standing ones, you get more the big belly, the gastroc of the calf. All right, so that's a wrap on my deadlift and lower body workout for this week. So if you like this video, like, share and subscribe. Tell all your friends about it. Get around the page, give me some feedback, what you want to see next, what content you want, what videos you want, because there's going to be plenty more coming soon. So big thanks to Aaron and Dylan for doing this video, and there'll be plenty more coming to the YouTube channel, so stay tuned.